Hi everyone, Michael from Pixeesoft here. Welcome to the series on migrating from bare metal to cloud. This will be our last video in the very first sprint, but that means that it's also the very first sprint review. We have a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. On this channel, we talk about software development, agile, and everything in between. So if you're new here, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss the next video in the series. Also, if you want to take it a step further, hit the bell so that you get notified as soon as the new video is published. So for those of you that haven't seen all the videos, a quick recap. First of all, we have an application that we need to migrate to the cloud. Why, you might ask? Well, in order to be able to scale up with the customers without the need to constantly buy new hardware. Second, the majority of the stack is a LAMP application: Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Thankfully, it's all designed as microservice-oriented architecture, so we can take one service here and there and replace it with a fresher and newer version. And third, there is documentation, but it lacks some key components, such as how the services are deployed or how they interact with each other. So in order to address all of these 3 points I just mentioned, I have decided to bring the application up to date with the latest technology trends. In order to track the progress and show the lessons learned with you, I have opted to split the work into sprints and make videos about it, just like this one. The first sprint was 7 working days. Now, there were some breaks in between. It wasn't 7 days straight, but all in all, it was 7 working days devoted to bringing the application to the cloud. So at the beginning of the review, let's remind ourselves what the application looked like at the beginning of the sprint when we first did our planning. As you can see, the board is optimistically filled with tasks that I rated to my best knowledge by the difficulty or the amount of effort that's needed to complete the task. And here's the board after the sprint. Now, it might seem like a failed sprint, but I guess that depends on your measure of success. Sure, if you have a customer waiting for delivery, you might be in trouble because you'd end up behind the schedule and you would have a lot of things to explain. Now, I am not particularly in a rush, but I will still explain what happened, where did I go wrong. Also, you may notice there is a task in a new lane, a freeze box, that looks almost identical to the one that's actually in the other one in Sprint Backlog. At one point, I added this task because I was doubting that I will be actually able to run the application in a Docker container. But then I calmed down, went back to the drawing board, came up with a solution, and so this task will not be done anymore. So I moved it to the freeze box, but then eventually I'll just remove it. There were 3 main errors that I made during the sprint planning. First of all, I was overly too optimistic with my estimates. I thought that the tasks would take way shorter than they actually did. Second, there were subtasks that I didn't see coming during the planning, and I had to add them to the backlog. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to complete the ones that were already there. So let's take an example. Let's create a Docker container for the auth service. Seemed like a half a day of work, but there were obstacles, and frankly, not just obstacles. I had some missing knowledge. I had to look up how CentOS works in a Docker container. Namely, I didn't know how Linux operates or how Linux even behaves in a CentOS Docker container. And then I didn't have the knowledge of how our in-house PHP framework is deployed. I didn't know the folder structure, and I had to do a lot of guesswork. Oh, perhaps it goes in this folder. Oh no, maybe it goes in this folder. No, that's also not working great. Or this folder. I had to do a lot of this playing around, trying to find the right way how to make it work. So if you combine the overly too optimistic estimates and then missing subtasks, you can imagine this messes up the schedule a bit. And third, I underestimated how long it takes to make these videos. My idea was I'll shoot 2 big videos per sprint. Sprint planning and sprint review / retrospective, like this one. Those I thought would take a maximum 1 day. And then I would shoot a daily stand-up video, which I thought would take maximum half a day or a couple of hours. But the reality was that the stand-ups took as long as the planning and the review to shoot and post-process, which in fact ended up in me spending 75% of the day just on the stand-up, and that kind of defeats the purpose of a stand-up. A stand-up should be a brief, short, to the point, 10 minutes maximum, done, let's get to work. But then I was left with only 25% of the day to work on my actual work. So at one point during the sprint, I thought to myself, hey, I'll shoot a stand-up video on 1 day, spend 75% of the day shooting the stand-up, and then the remaining 25% I'll spend working, plus the day after, where I won't shoot a stand-up. But then again, then we're getting into the situation, hey, that's not a stand-up, that's just another video for the purpose of making a video. Stand-ups should occur frequently, and they should be short, and they shouldn't take that much time. So from now on, I will continue on making these 2 big videos per sprint, but the stand-ups, they will have to change. I won't do a YouTube video per se, like this one, but I will definitely check in with you. I just have to figure out the format. It will either be an IGTV and Facebook Live combined, or Instagram Live and Facebook Live. But for that, I would need 2 phones next to each other. I have to figure the format out, how exactly I'll go about doing that. So which tasks did I finish? Well, mainly everything around the authentication service. There are 5 key wins. I have access to all of the source code for the authentication service. The whole project is now in a Git repository on Bitbucket. The service can be started locally using a Docker container, which is reproducible. The service has a functional database running in Google Cloud Platform. I have tested out all of the user management. Sign in, sign up, and sign out works great. Now you might be asking, did I accumulate any technical debt? Yes, I did. The constants are semi-hard-coded in the application. Some are in XML and some depend on the state of the database. This is something that wasn't in the documentation, but at least now it's noted. However, it's not great that an application-specific logic is somehow torn between an XML file and a database entry. And then the auth service runs locally, and for now only locally. The Docker container ships with hard-coded constants that pretty much specify only localhost. So in order to run it in the cloud, I'll have to hard-code those constants in so that it runs in production. Now, this isn't a big problem because I actually want to replace this service as soon as possible. I'm not too keen in keeping it up to date because the in-house PHP framework will no longer be maintained. So we actually want to switch to something, let's say, more modern. Now, there are various open source solutions, but there's also a product such as Firebase that has authentication for free. Now, this poses a new problem. This introduces a vendor lock-in, which might be an issue in the future. So I have to weigh all the pros and cons, and I'll let you know in a future video. So what are the good outcomes of this sprint? I have the know-how of how the in-house developed PHP framework is deployed. I know how it works. Now, I might not know the nitty-gritty details, but at least I know enough to reproduce it for every other service. I now understand how CentOS works in a Docker container, and since the other services are also deployed on top of CentOS, I'll be able to speed things up and use this knowledge to deploy the other services more quickly. And finally, I have access to all of the production services. So now when I'm stuck, I can just quickly look into the folder structure and not do the guesswork that really wasted a lot of time. And what are the bad outcomes? Obviously, I hope to have more done than I actually did, but lesson learned, and I hope that the key learnings from this sprint will help me move faster. Also, there's some technical debt, but it's noted, and hopefully I'll address it as we move on. And also, the pace of the videos is not sustainable, so that will have to change as well. So there it is, our very first sprint review. We went through the tasks, key learnings, lessons learned, the good and the bad. But let's hear from you now. How do you go about doing your sprint reviews/retrospectives? Do you focus on the product or do you focus more on the people? Let me know in the comment section below. Okay, that's all from me now. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on our next sprint planning.